Don't take your love away from me.
Let's talk to one person about some related topics here. Our next guest warns that the Fed's $700 billion rescue plan will do more harm than good, potentially sending the dollar into a free fall and dangerously eroding Americans' purchasing power. Joining us now is Peter Schiff, president of Euro Pacific Capital. He was also an economic advisor to former Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul, no longer involved, obviously, in that. Peter, thanks for joining us. Let me ask you, first of all, about the bad side effects you think that we'll see from this plan. I mean, I know you don't think it's going to work, but it won't help, but what is it going to hurt, actually?
No, look, we're selling our financial souls to the devil with this bill. Remember, it's the government that got us into this mess. It was a Federal Reserve that irresponsibly lowered interest rates and kept them there. It was government-created Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that insured all these mortgages, that created the moral hazard, that allowed home prices to rise and allowed lending standards to be thrown out the window. The government interfered in the free market. They did this to us, and now they're going to grab all this power. They're going to print trillions of dollars, and they're ushering in an even bigger crisis now, which is going to be coming, which is going to be a currency crisis. There's going to be a run on the dollar. Interest rates are going to go through the roof. And now we're going to have a much, much bigger problem, not only in the housing market, but the entire economy.
Peter, doesn't the government have to do something? I mean, I understand your free market viewpoint 100%, but, you know, if you go in, for example, if we go in and invade Iraq, we can't just leave after we're done destroying the country. You've got to do something at least to sort of wean us off of this.
But remember, the government lied to us to get us into Iraq. They told us there were weapons of mass destruction there. When are we going to stop believing the government? They keep doing something, and every time they do something, they hurt us. This plan is a weapon of mass destruction for our economy. You know, when I wrote my book, Crash Proof, How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse, that came out in, last year, in February of last year, I predicted this collapse. It's going exactly the way I wrote. And what I also predicted is that the government was going to take actions like this to try to stop the collapse from happening. And that these government cures were going to be worse than the government disease. And we're going to end up dying not from the disease, but from their cure.
What do you expect, or what would you suggest that the government do other than go on recess and not reconvene?
You know what they got to do? We've got to restore sound money, number one. All right, we need much, much higher interest rates. We've got to tie the dollar to something. We've got to go back on a gold standard. We've got to give some value to our money. And we've got to reduce the size of government. We've got to slash government spending. We've got to cut taxes in a responsible way to make government smaller. And, you know, it's not going to be sunshine and lollipops. We're going to have to pay the price for borrowing trillions of dollars to consume. We've wrecked our economy. But with all this government intervention, we're never going to be able to build it back up again. The government needs to level with the American public, let them know what a big ditch we're in, and then let us get out of it ourselves. We're never going to get out of it with the government in charge.
All right, Peter, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a quick break here so we can put up some commercials. When we come back, I want to keep you on. I want to ask you what investors should do with their money in order to avoid these problems that you're talking about. Where should they go? Should they go and buy gold? Should they go and buy oil? Looks like a lot of people did that today. We're going to keep Peter Schiff with us, Euro Pacific Capital president there, also a former advisor to Ron Paul. Stay with us for more on that and more on crude oil as well, a $25 a barrel jump. All right, we are back with Peter Schiff, president of Euro Pacific Capital. And Peter, you expected this to come, at least the dollar weakness that we're seeing today, the huge jump in commodities that we're watching here, equities coming down. You wrote a book on how to deal with it. So what are the most important pieces of advice you give to investors? Where do you hide in this kind of climate?
Well, you know, part of the idea behind Crash Proof was that ultimately it was the dollar that was going to crash. And so people have to get rid of U.S. assets, period. You know, the government is supposedly passing this bailout bill, to make sure that when we go to the bank and we put our ATM cards in there, that the dollars actually come out. They want to make sure that we don't lose any dollars. But they're guaranteeing that the dollars are going to lose their purchasing power. And that's what's more important. So while you can, get your money out of the bank, out of your CDs and money markets and U.S. government bonds, and you've got to get out of the dollar as fast as you can. That means buying government bonds in foreign countries, buying foreign currencies, foreign-based income streams through dividend-paying foreign stocks. It means loading up on commodities, especially gold and silver. Those prices are just going to take off through the stratosphere.
Yeah, what do you think about gold? I mean, a few weeks ago I talked to Jean-Marie Eviard, and he basically said, you know, right now people think treasuries are the safe haven, but he thinks that he said government actions are going to just drive inflation through the roof, and you have to be holding actual gold.
Look, the dollar is going to lose its status as the reserve currency. Remember, the dollar was pegged to gold for 200 years, and the world was on a gold standard up until 1971. After the Second World War, in Bretton Woods, we convinced the world to abandon the gold standard in favor of a dollar standard. And we told the world, we have all the gold. You can convert your currencies to dollars and get gold whenever you want. But by 1971, we had printed so many dollars that we had to close the gold window. The dollar lost about 2/3 of its value in the ensuing 6 years, but it stayed on as the reserve currency at a lower value, even though there was no longer gold backing. I think what we're doing now is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and the dollar is going to lose that status. It's going to fall through the floor. And again, that's going to usher in a much, much bigger crisis, and the government's going to be powerless to do anything about it. So in advance of that, just get out of the U.S. and get out quick.
All right, Peter Schiff there, president of Euro Pacific Capital. Peter, thanks very much for joining us. Now, more on the...
Don't take your love away from me. Don't you leave my heart in misery. If you go, then I'll be blue, 'cause breaking up